Hey, this is Joe with SoFly, and in this video, we are going to export WooCommerce orders using WP All Export. So to get started, we'll go down here to All Export, and we'll select New Export. And then we'll select WooCommerce Orders from the dropdown. And we've detected 5,754 orders on our site. That's all of the orders that we have. Now I can filter these down if I want to. So for example, let's say I wanted to only export people with a shipping state of California. So we'll do that. And you can see here now we have 621 orders that are going to be exported. We'd select migrate orders down here if we wanted to kind of export these orders, then migrate them to a different WordPress site. But in this case, we're just going to create our own export file. So we'll click Customize Export File. And then here is where we set up our export file. So this is what we get from the default, just the order ID, order key, and the title. I don't need the order key, so I'll drag that out of the box, or the title. And then over here, I can drag and drop more data. So let's put in the order date. Let's see. And there we go. Now let's say I don't want to have the time in there. So I can click this, and then I can just say year, month, date. Save. And there we go. Now I just have the date in there without the time. Nice and easy, right? If I wanted to, I can change the column name. Just like that. And there we go. Pretty easy. So to add a new field, I can drag in from over here, or I can click Add Field. So let's see what we have available. Let's say I want to add in the customer name, right? So the first name, done. So that's their first name. Well, let's say I want to add their first name and their last name together in one field. So what I'll do is I'll create a custom export field. And then in here, I'm going to drag in their billing first name and their billing last name. I'll put a space in there and we'll just call this name. And we'll save it. Get rid of this one. And there we go. Now let's add another one of those and let's put in their address, right? So I'll add another one for their address. So custom export field, billing address 1, comma, space, city, and then state and postcode. Call this address. We'll call it their billing address. Save that. Preview. There we go. Now you might have noticed here, I have this little function down here that I've written. This is kind of cool. So what I can do is I can pass this data through a custom function. So to do that, let's add in our state. So we'll go down here to customer and let's take our billing state just as a quick little demo. And we're going to export this and we're going to pass it through my replace state function that I have. And all it does is it takes the state. If it's CA, it replaces it with California, right? That's it. And there we go. Kind of a useless demo, but it's a pretty powerful feature. So you can pass any data here through a PHP function and kind of do whatever you want to do with it. So if you're passing in the order ID, then you can process the order ID and do all sorts of weird stuff. Like you can pull out order data and stuff that's not accessible over here. And then relate it to, for example, like the customer data or the product data and stuff like that. If you want to get kind of like, if you want to do some really custom stuff, it lets you do pretty much anything you need to do. So we have a bunch of other data available over here that we can export. So we went over the order data, customer data. This is pretty much everything related to the customer. This is our item data. So this actual stuff that they purchased. So we have, the SKU, product name, the product variation details, which is just kind of like all of it. But we can also just get the product color if we wanted to. So just any of the individual attributes for the product data. We can pull in the price, the number of stock for that item, and the total sales that it's had. So let's take a look. And you can see here we have all of that data in there. So let's get rid of some of this stuff because we don't really need it for our export. But I do kind of want the the product color and the product name in there. Yeah. And then we have over here, we have some more stuff. We have the taxonomies, custom fields, and some more advanced stuff that's generally not super useful, but maybe you need to export it. So we kind of put it in there in the advanced section. Moving along, next up, so we'd have our items, tax and shipping information associated with the order, fees and discounts, like coupons and stuff like that, any taxes, like the fee amounts and things like that, taxes paid on the fees, notes, any order notes on there, refund information, custom fields, other is just kind of a grab bag of advanced stuff that most people don't need to export. And then any ACF data associated with the order. Then down here in our advanced options, you can change the CSV separator. And one interesting thing to take note of here is we have this option here, display each product in its own row. So if an order has more than one order, each order by default is going to show up on its own row. Now, let's say I wanted to disable that. Now each order is on its own row and each product has its own column, right? So you can kind of set that up however you want to do. You can, keep it on so every product has its own row, and you can choose to disable fill in the empty columns. So then that way, you can see here, all the empty columns are not filled in and it's a little bit easier to read. So you have some flexibility here in how you want to export things. And then down here, we have our export type. So you can choose a CSV file or the 2 different Excel file options that are available. These are pretty much identical. Maybe you care, maybe you don't. Doesn't really matter. If you're interested in exporting to XML, we have XML available, simple XML where you can just drag and drop here, or a custom XML feed where you can actually write the actual XML spec that you need, including you can put data here in the XML attributes and things like that. You can put the XML header up there. You can edit all this information. If you need some help doing that, we have the documentation right here in the plugin. Yeah, pretty cool stuff. In this case, though, we're just going to stick to our simple CSV file export. If you're curious about XML feed exports, check the description below. We have tons of videos on that. And that's pretty much it. So we've set up our export how we wanted to get it exported. Now we're going to continue. All right, so over here, we have our scheduling options. So we have 2 different ways to do it. Let's say we wanted to run this order, every Monday. So every Monday here at, midnight, this export's now going to run. This service actually costs $9 a month from us. And yeah, you just set it up in here, click save, go, and then we'll take care of the scheduling for you. If you don't want to pay for the service, if you're more comfortable with cron jobs, you can use manual scheduling. And then you just set up a cron job. We have some documentation here on how to set this up. And if you check the description below, we have videos on how to set up cron jobs and things like that. Pretty simple stuff. Scheduling, super powerful, and pretty useful for running an order export, especially when combined with Zapier. So we have an integration with Zapier. So for example, this schedule here, this is going to run every Monday at midnight. I can then set up Zapier so that this export will be sent to Zapier. And I can do things like email it out automatically, add it to Dropbox, add the export file to Dropbox. In certain circumstances, I can actually add the exported data to Google Sheets, things like that. So very, very useful. Tons of cool stuff you can do. Scheduling's great. Again, check the description below. We have some videos on scheduling. And then down here in the advanced options, we have some stuff that's pretty relevant to exporting orders. So you can export each WooCommerce order in real time as they are completed. This is pretty cool. So every time, when this is enabled, I save and run the export. Every time somebody creates an order and it gets completed, boom, this export runs and just that one specific order gets exported. Now, if I set this up with Zapier, that order data gets sent to Zapier and I can do whatever I need to do with it, right? I can send it to my ERP, a CRM, I can email it, I can send custom emails. I can add that user to MailChimp with some specific metadata associated with it. You can, send an HTTP post with that order data wherever you want to go. You can do tons of stuff with this. Super useful. Very cool feature. You can also get a little bit more granular. You can choose to only export orders once. So in this case, every time this export gets run again, for example, on a schedule, only the new orders that were created since the last run are going to be included. So let's say I set up a schedule to run every Monday, only export orders once. By definition, only the orders that have been added in the last week, because that order export runs every week, so only those orders that have been added in the last week are going to be included. So again, pretty cool feature. This one's slightly different, only orders that have been modified since the last export. And then, these are pretty self-explanatory. And then this is pretty interesting too. So you can allow non-admins to run an export in client mode. So the way client mode works is you go over here to settings, and then you tell WPL export which user roles have access to client mode. If a user role, for example, let's say I give my editors access to client mode. When those editors log into WordPress, they'll then see the all export menu item over here. Now they can't create new exports, right? Because with a new export, when you're editing an export, you can run PHP. We don't want non-admins running PHP because they can basically just write code that makes them an admin. And so that's pretty insecure, right? But what they can do is they can run an existing export without being able to edit it, and that's safe, and we let them do that. So if you give editors access, and then you go over here and you set this export to be available to those with access to client mode, then all of my editors can now run this export safely, right? Pretty neat. Yeah, if you have a site where you need to let people run these exports and stuff like that and get the data, pretty useful stuff. All right, so that's it for our export settings page. We're going to confirm and run the export. Now we're running a couple hundred of these. It'll go pretty quick, but let it finish and I'll come back when it's done. All right, so the export has completed. So we'll go over here to download our CSV. Go ahead and open that. And here is our export. So this is all of our data that we set up. This is our export file. Pretty easy to set up. We have our scheduling options over here. We can edit our scheduling options on this page as well. Also on the Manage Exports page. External apps. This explains how to set up our Zapier integration. Very cool feature. Check the description below. There's just tons of cool stuff you can do with Zapier. Export, edit, import. So this, for example, let's say I wanted to edit my orders in Excel and then re-upload them to the site. So what I do is I run this export, download the CSV over here, edit in Excel, click import with WPL import. And then my orders now are going to have that edited version of the data on the site. Pretty simple feature. The bundle here, this is mostly if we want to migrate our orders to a new site. So you download the bundle, it's a zip file, it has our CSV, and then it has a settings file for WPL import. We upload the zip, and then WPL import has the import settings pre-configured. So we just upload the zip, click run, and then those orders are now imported onto our new site. And then finally down here, we have our secure URL. So we click generate, and then we can give this URL to anybody. And what it's going to do is it's going to, anytime you go to that URL, it's going to download the most recent version of our export file. So if this runs on a schedule, let's say every day, every time I go to that URL, it's just going to give me a fresh version of the file. Pretty useful if you're building some sort of system and, you want to run the export and then get the latest version of it, or you just want to give this to somebody and they can just go to that and get the latest version of the whatever export you're running. This is how to do that. So with WPL export, you have a lot of tools that you can use, kind of build systems around your data. Anyway, so that's all it takes to set up a WooCommerce order export with WPL export. Just takes a few minutes and you can do literally whatever you need to do, simply with dragging and dropping. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. And check us out. We have a ton of content related to importing and exporting WordPress data. Thanks again, and we will see you soon.